Up this bike today. This bike was a wreck. This is going to be my spare motor for the Sprint. As you see, as far as the story he told me, he ran it into the back of a Honda Civic. Front end crashed, so it bent up the radiator and everything, and the forks are bent, and you know, it's got newer tires on it. The motor's basically spotless. I pulled the plug out. I was able to rotate the motor over by hand. All the harness is good. I spliced it down here when I had the battery hooked up. Put power to both of these, the red and the tan, to energize the ECM, and then this, the starter, and then hit it so the motor does bump over, which is good. And it sounds like it's got compression. I'll put a compression tester on it later. ECM, everything's in it, all the harness and everything is good. So now I'm basically just going to pull off everything I don't need, sell that, like the exhaust and stuff. And after all that's gone, all that's left is the motor. Take the motor, clean it up, go through it, and remove all the stuff I don't need. Alright, we got the motor out of the bike. Like I was saying earlier, it's a pretty clean motor. It doesn't look like it's got that many miles on it. The guy said around 6,000 miles. Do I believe him? No. Because there was no cluster in the bike. So you never know. They could have just cleaned it up really good each time. But I mean, it looks clean. It doesn't look like there was nothing ever really touched. I did notice the valve cover. The gasket, someone was in here, maybe they doing something and it got pushed in, or maybe that happened during the accident. And then there's the bare bike, almost nothing to it. And of course we're having one of our Florida storms as usual. Yeah, now just to remove all the OEM harness on it and go from there. Okay, back to this engine again. As before, I was saying it would attempt to crank and it just wouldn't. It would like click and it would try to spin it and it just would stop. So I pulled the starter out of the motor, grounded it out on the block, hit it, it worked. Okay, so I figure let me pull the cover off, the stator cover off where the flywheel goes, because this is where the starter goes. The starter comes through the block here and engages an idler, which that engages on this shaft, which sits inside the block, which spins the gear on the back of the flywheel here. So when I pulled the cover off, I noticed that this was out of place. It was knocked off that gear with the pin. So once I put the pin and put the idlers back in, I'll turn it over now so you can see. So now the motor spins over. So now all I got to do is hook everything back up, spray a little carb cleaner in here, and see if she'll fire up. Alright, I've got number one plug out. Let's see, it's going to be hard to do with one hand, but let's see if we can get some good compression, hopefully. Okay, looks like number one is at 180. Okay, all right. And number two hooked up. Let's test number two. Okay, looks like 181. All right, here's going to be number three. Looks like 185. Looks like, yeah, 185. Almost 190. Alright, last one is going to be number 4. Compression test. Looks like 1 89 on compression. Not bad, they're all about even, crossed. Plugs look about the same. Same shading, the electrodes look good. Cylinders down inside look pretty good, so I'd say it seems like a healthy motor. Of course, I don't have the hat on it because I'm not even going to use that. My other system's for methanol, so I will continue to use the methanol setup. But I noticed another thing too on the starting system, because I fixed the gear and then I put everything back together. There's no gasket here, so they had RTV, so it's giving a hard start on the starter because there's a shaft that runs through there. You need to have that spacing. If not, it'll drag on the starter and sometimes make it a no start. But I'm happy with it. You can't, out of a wrecked bike, motors, well, I mean, I literally had to cut it out of the frame. There's a chunk missing out of the frame here where I had to cut the mount off because it broke off in the side of the motor. That'll be something I'll weld the stud to and do an extraction on. But yes, this will be the spare motor for the Sprint, so all there is to do now is pull all the hoses off, drain the oil. Eventually I'll fire it up with the harness that's on the other motor that's at hyper right now. Or what I'll do is I'll take this one off and get this one converted, or I'll just delete the safeties and sensors myself. And there's a couple other things I still got to pull off the bike chassis. Some sensors, stuff like that. But other than that though, happy with it. Put it back in the car as a spare. We'll make a little pallet for it to keep in the trailer if we go out of state or something like that. Exhaust, got to remove the exhaust. That exhaust will not work on the Sprints. It's got to be a Sprint style exhaust. But other than that though, thanks for watching guys. Bye.